Starting off with where I left last in the last video, man. I've had a bit of interruptions, but this video is going to be a bit long, I think. So, uh, in 2004, when I went to see Devraz Dal, telling him that I was going to Warwick University and and ensuing this 18 plus years of criminal murders saga, I got to know up close and personal the very empire itself, obviously. So I told him I was going to Warwick University, and he said, "You're going at the right time. There's going to be direct rule now from Gyanendra, the, the the whore of Nepal, long-term Int'L asset of his masters, obviously, having betrayed his brother and being uh, one of the main protagonists of the Royal Massacre 2001. So uh, when he said that, and I told him, it was foretold. That was the reason the Royal Massacre happened, and he had started interrogating me. I mean, one of the example. I mean, I've written it in Twitter too. I mean, one of the. I mean, kind of a not an example, but I mean, the circumstantial evidence, so to speak. But it really pointed towards where he was headed anyway. I mean, he had his own sister-in-law, the wife of his youngest brother, murdered. I mean, it's very clear, crystal clear who did that. I mean, it was Intel operation as well, but I mean, obviously, it had to have a go ahead from Ganondra as well, being Intel asset. I mean, international Intel operation to begin with. So she was murdered, and have written it in a lake in western Nepal. Was told to be a helicopter accident, but only she had apparently fallen into the lake. Nothing had happened to anybody else. So I'd given that an example. I mean, I've written it on Twitter. I mean, clearly, I mean, nothing to hide. But while giving that, I'd also given an example of. I mean, the reason I'm bringing this up is very revealing itself. I mean, what kind of captive state Nepal is. I mean, full-fledged intel operation all around. I mean, that's the reason it deliberately kept fragile, always unstable, little country between India and China for everybody to go and play. So I'd give an example of, I mean, the very person he had told me in between these times, so, I mean, after he had found out that I was not going to be, I guess, I mean, while he was still hoping that I would be his son-in-law, perhaps, he'd already told me Mother Bhandari had been killed. I mean, by American India. That's what he told me. So, as I've said in other videos. So, I'd give an example of this communist leader, Mother Bhandari's driver, sole driver surviving in the four-wheel drive he was driving, fell into the fast-flowing Himalayan mountain river, and then he and his associate named Jivraj Asri died, but the driver survived miraculously. But then the driver was killed in the middle of a street in Kathmandu, sometimes in 2000, I don't know, 2001 or 2, I don't know, I can't quite recall. So I'd given that as an example. I mean, you would, I mean, the reason he was killed, the driver, the surviving driver, was you killed the witness. So, I mean, one remaining close relation, the wife of his youngest brother, Dhirendra, who, by the way, had a long-term relationship with the English woman and stayed in London for a long time as well. And I think he does. He had a secret daughter. I mean, nobody's secret, but not really announced in Nepal. So, so that woman was. I mean, I had given that an example, and then I had brought that up as well. Look, I mean, just like Madan Bhandari's murder witness, I mean, this driver was murdered, and then he had gotten very scared. I mean, angry and scared at once, dark face, and looked at me and what do you think happened? What do you think happened? Kept repeating, and that started this whole saga. I mean, and also with Andrew McCoss, obviously, and also this. uh, long-term, most loyal ward of his master, George Barugis of Asia Foundation. I mean, always worried. I mean, did nothing happen to you? Because I'd sent that report, uh, my impression of Royal Massacre, uh, done on behalf of Sushil Pyakurel, by the way, Human Rights Commissioner at the time in 2004 when I was leaving for UK. So uh, he had become already Human Rights Commissioner when he had made me write that report in 2001, by the way. So, so the reason I had brought, I mean, I'm bringing that up is so after 2006 when I went back and he had known what had happened, you know, he'd asked me how much money I saved. I mean, he already knew, but I still told him, you know, I lived on campus, so there was no opportunity. Later on, save, I had to bring my own money. I told him, and he said, "Oh, I mean, you live like a king." I mean, he had known. I mean, you live like king, enjoying full. The reason, obviously, is I mean, I'll get back to it how I lived in Warwick University from 2004 to 6. While I was struggling, I still went out, you know, met friends second year because I thought I'll make best out of all the sufferings I was going through. I mean, the hell and horror I was being put through. I mean, you know, I won't allow it to affect me. So he'd known, so he told me that. And then he, interestingly, I mean, you know, the political change had happened. People had started talking about, you know, Royal Massacre as well. Gyanendra had been relegated to a figurehead, and by 2008 he would be gone altogether. Nepal would be declared a republic. So, I mean, you know, again, I've talked about it in other videos. Very leaky place, very unprofessional, childish-like. There used to be a, I mean, even army supposedly very strict, regimented Nepal army's inside stories would come out through a tabloid named Jana Asta. And the editor of that tabloid, I mean, supposedly a communist cadre close to a communist party, but somehow he had infiltrated and started making friends with some army generals. And it was always about one army general against the other, you know, talking about promotions. Very unprofessional. But that journalist, I mean, you know, ended up actually murdering an actress, budding actress. He had started sexual relationship with the actress. I mean, perhaps you know, ensnared her, and then perhaps the actress. I mean, not perhaps. Obviously, the actress had found the relationship abusive and wanted out of it. But he had taken picture her naked picture and published it in the newspaper. Obviously, you know, as an insult. I mean, as revenge. And the actress died by suicide. A communist journalist. I mean, that place is so criminalized, mafioso. But anyway, I mean, all third world countries are kept like that deliberately. No, I come to understand. I mean, the first world is as criminal as this. I mean, what do you expect from third world? But anyway, so I mean, there was already stuff leaking. I mean, like this Rana boy Gagan. I mean, I talked about in first few videos. He himself talking about, you know, letting me know. I mean, his uncle, the army general, supposedly a criminal coup Rana general, obviously made part of the military coup that was Royal Massacre 2001, international Int'L operation, was already telling his family what had really happened, that it was indeed a military coup. So some general must have talked and felt like now it's time to let it all out. So a newspaper, Devrat Dal was reading at Fidriki Stiftung, and then it was written in the newspaper. Apparently, the Israeli intelligence agency Mossad had sent several of his assassins wearing the mask of Crown Prince Dipendra. Prosthetics can be easily made, and then it was done in that way. So that's what I talk about in another video. So he himself told me that appearing to recite the newspaper, that the Royal Massacre was organized international intel operation, and it was outsourced to the Israeli intelligence agency Mossad, and then they had